Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and today I'm excited to have a familiar face with me, the Secretary of the Maryland State Budget, David Brinkley. Welcome, David.
It's good to be here. Thanks, Jan.
Well, thank you for joining us today. You know, many of our residents in Frederick County know you from your former role in the state legislature, where you represented a portion of the county very ably for many years, both as a delegate and as a senator. And now I know everybody is very pleased that you're now the state budget director. And we really appreciate having you represent us in that role.
It's great to be here, and I love coming back and doing some work here in Frederick. And you know, to your listeners, forgive me, I have a cold, but it was quite an honor to represent Frederick and Carroll counties in the House of Delegates and in the Senate. Certainly, you know, when you lose an election, that's disappointing, but you know, you pick up and you move on. But then having the governor win his election was very exciting for all of us. And you know, and he won reaching out to all sides. Everybody knows that just based on voter registration, he's not going to win with just Republican voters. There were a lot of disaffected Democrats, and his mission is to reach out, bring everybody in, and improve the state. And to that extent, I told him, I said, my mission is to help you be a success. Anything that I can do, I'll be happy to. And with my background, 11 years on the Budget and Tax Committee, then 1 year on the Finance Committee, it's great. And I have to tell you, I have a great team in place. What we're excited about is the operating budget is the governor's policy side. The capital budget certainly is what I call the sticks and bricks, you know that.
Right.
But then trying to juggle all that, trying to deal with where Maryland had been, where we are today, and where we also want Maryland to go in the future.
So tell us a little bit about what your job is like. I mean, everybody knows you obviously manage the budget, and you have a very prominent role during the legislative session with the introduction of the budget and getting the budget passed by the legislature. But then what happens the rest of the year? What else do you? What other responsibilities do you have?
That was actually an eye opener for me, was because I was used to the budget process as a legislator, where we had it for about 75 days, and then it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. When the session ends, as the budget secretary, we're closing out the 15 budget. We were getting ready to implement the 16 budget, which was recently passed, tweaking it, still making sure that we had everything going forward. And then as recently as August, we were starting to send directions to all the department heads, you know, as we're preparing for the 18 and moving forward, you know, the 17 and 18 budgets. So at that time, you're dealing with three different budgets, closing one out, implementing the other one, and then crafting the next one. So there's an awful lot that goes on, an awful lot behind the scenes, and I have a phenomenal staff that helps us do that. We get an awful lot of tough questions thrown our way, and you know, to that extent, we have to get some attorneys and all involved, find out how things are really working. We do a lot of feedback. This is the first year that I'm aware that the budget secretary, in this case me, but we also had other secretaries of different departments travel out into different parts of the state. Now, of course, the governor was also dealing with tackling his cancer situation, and so that became an opportunity for some of us to go out. I ended up traveling to Washington County, Allegheny County, meeting some people from Garrett County out there, St. Mary's County, Dorchester County, you know, just, you know, I was down in Montgomery County, Prince George's County.
So you're not sitting in the office.
You're not sitting in the office. And what's important about that is getting out, A, to see what's going on in other parts of the state, but B, also so that they can see, you know, here's a person from the governor's cabinet, and he's come out to see exactly what's going on.
Right. Well, you know, there's a lot of things in the budget. You know, obviously from my experience here at the county, I know that throughout the fall we're looking at revenue estimates. We're asking agencies to prioritize what they may want in the upcoming budget, look at where they can maybe save money, reviewing programs. So I get that it happens all year long,
Yes.
not just during that public debate. So, but I think the budget is one of the most important things we do in government, because we have the tax dollars of our constituents, in your case, all across the state of Maryland, and how we spend that money should reflect the values and priorities of people across the state, and it should provide services and infrastructure to everybody. And Maryland has different needs in different parts of the states. We have certain commonalities. You know, everybody wants to have good schools and wants to have good roads, but there's other unique things across the state. So I know you have to balance all of those things,
right.
as does as does the governor. Now, obviously, we'll all wait for the governor to announce his budget later in the month of January, right after the legislature starts its session. But we know that revenue's coming in at least a little bit better, so we're seeing some improvement in the economy and thus some improvements in tax revenues. But it's still a little shaky, a little uncertain. I know from our perspective, we've seen income tax revenues go up some and then kind of taper off and slow down again. So what is your sense of where the budget's going and how the economy's going and how you're going to fiscally manage that?
And the state has experienced the same thing. What we saw was an uptick in income taxes, primarily the result of capital gains. But we also know that capital gains are not something for us to count on,
Right. Nor
do we have a system in place through the comptroller's office to accurately predict how much and when and where. So those are some challenges. So we've got a good breather. We had more monies come in. The administration was successful in putting new people in place in certain departments. They looked very critically at what was going on. And we were very pleased that we got about, I think, 150% of our reversions back than what we expected. We anticipated $30 million. We got $85 million to come back. That was just from the 15 budget. So in other words, just new ways of looking at things. How can we save a little money here? But concurrently, we also identified areas of greater need, particularly when it comes to public safety. The governor's been very focused on the Department of Corrections, dealing with the Baltimore City Jail. He's been very focused also on helping state police, something that those of us in the rural areas are very dependent on the state police. And so making sure that those departments are taken care of. When we had the Baltimore City riots occur, I mean, something totally unexpected, but he was able to react very quickly, gather the resources to address it, and try to ensure people's safety. Now we're just dealing with the aftermath of that. So you're absolutely right. There's been a lot of things that have gone on. We've had a good year financially. We don't know that we can count on that to continue. And by definition, you've heard me say this, you've used it a lot, but your viewing public may not know there's what's called a structural gap, the structural deficit. Our planned revenues are to increase at about, I think it's about 3.8%. However, the law says we shall increase spending by 4.5%. Those two numbers don't marry each other. And so that's what we're constantly trying to juggle. So what we are looking to the legislature for is some out-year structural relief. Help us on the formulas. We have some breathing room now. This is the time to do it. And the governor would like to then, certainly focus efforts on making Maryland employer-friendly. Let's allow the entrepreneurs to thrive that are here. Let's have the people stay that are here, that are trying to create jobs. And if we find somebody in Virginia, West Virginia, California who would like to come east, let's let them choose Maryland. So we're really trying to address that. And I think there's a commonality with the legislature on that, because the legislature created the Augustine Commission to look at where Maryland, which I sit on, but to look at where Maryland can improve its business environment and climate. So we're anxiously looking for that report to come forward too. So we want to make Maryland a friendly place, a great place for Maryland families, and certainly for employers. And to that end, I think we have some of the right ingredients. But we're still going to have to make some tough choices going forward.
Okay. Now, one of the big issues that we've had locally, which I'm sure you're aware of because everybody is experiencing across the state, is the rising cost of school construction.
Yep.
And the governor's put $280 million into the budget for school construction. And so do you see any ability within the state's debt affordability to increase the amount of state commitment for school construction to help us meet those rising costs?
Well, part of there are three sources to those rising costs. One is what you've talked about, prevailing wage. The other one have been the environmental issues with the LEED status for making sure that they meet those standards. The other one have been the surface costs on dealing with stormwater issues. Those have been policy decisions that the legislature has made. They can choose to change some of those. We would hope that they would. We don't know that they will, because what our mission then is to make sure that the dollar can get us the maximum classroom space. Right. And it's not just the square footage, it's also certainly the quality of it. Look at what happened with Frederick High School and the cost that went up with it. Allegheny County had an issue where they had to shut down the whole project on that, potentially reimburse the state for the monies that were already given, but then they're resubmitting it. And this effect is happening all over the place. It's not just getting at putting more money into the programs. Now we have people actually paying attention to why are the costs being driven up and what can we do to address those, in which case we can make the same dollar go a lot further. And I think that there's a lot of commonality among everybody in wanting to see that happen.
Well, how do you think that county governments can partner with the state on that issue and on other issues related to the budget? You know, last year we seemed to have a lot of camaraderie on the budget until maybe the last couple of weeks where some things, differences came out between the governor and the legislature and some others. So how can we participate as county governments, both on the capital side and the operating side?
The big thing, I think, on the capital side, since I just wrapped up that conversation, is talk to the legislators. I know that the Frederick County delegation will be on board with making some changes, particularly with the prevailing wage. But the surface issue, the surface disturbance and the stormwater management is another area that we're doing an awful lot of work elsewhere that I think there can be some help there. With the LEED standards, the environmental standards and all that, that can certainly help us do that. We are also examining, do we really need to build schools for 100 years, which, you know, they're to stand the test for 100 years, when in fact, you know, my high school, Linganore High School, was torn down when it was only about 55 years old. I mean, it's ironic that it was erected in my lifetime and then I helped get the money for its replacement. So maybe we can design them to not have that type of lifespan in the context that we find that from a societal point of view, they're going to have changing needs anyway. Look at what's happening in our neighboring Carroll County, where they're having to make the decision to shut down 3 schools, a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school. So the other thing I like to remind people, even when I was a senator, and Jan, I'll reiterate it here, some of the challenges that we face here in Frederick County are challenges other jurisdictions wish they had.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, when you look at what's going on the Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, and far Western Maryland, they wish they had some of the challenges that we have.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in Frederick County because I think we're the place where economic development is happening. We have lots of positive things happening here, and that helps our budget, and it helps our quality of life. And not everybody in the state has that energy that we experience here. And so I know they don't see it on the Eastern Shore and Western Maryland, so you're absolutely right about that. We have a lot to be thankful here in Frederick County, and I think we are one of the economic drivers for the state of Maryland. So any kind of closing comments you'd like to make about the upcoming session?
Well, you know, it's going to be interesting. It's because you have a freshman group of legislators that now know where everything is. They know what they're doing. You have a governor who now is very familiar with, you know, what a whole session looks like. He's been in conversations with legislative leadership. They're going to lock horns on certain issues, but I think that we're also all interested in moving the cart in the same direction. We are interested in trying to, you know, slow the growth of government, curtail, make sure that we're more efficient with it. We would love to be able to see some type of tax relief, but we also have to make sure that we're on a steady course first.
Right.
Make sure that we're providing the services that citizens demand. And then looking at making sure that we can reward Maryland families for their patience.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I have always appreciated your open door policy. So for any of us here from Frederick County who want to come and talk to you about the budget during the session, you've always been welcoming to us, and I really appreciate that. It's been a great partnership on a personal level and a professional level. So I want to say thank you very much for being so welcoming to us.
And I try to go back and forth from Frederick to Annapolis every day. It mounts up the miles.
We're very proud to have you there, and I look forward to working with you this session for the benefit of our community. So thank you for joining us. I hope you learned a little bit from former Senator David Brinkley, who's now the State Budget Secretary, and what's happening in the state of Maryland. Thank you for joining us.